Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Supercoach 2015 is 2 days away, even though by the time this video gets up,
it was probably 3 weeks ago.
But no, Supercoach is nearing us very quickly. Pre-season is just around the corner, where we get to see all the rookies, some of the older sort of senior guys that are looking to keep their place in the team, and a couple of those mid-price breakouts that we hope to get that'll win us Supercoach for the year, Fitzy. But
yes,
we're going to talk about the backline.
Yes, we're going to talk about the back end, just like you like talking about.
No, that's for a different time video.
Yeah, what we're gonna do in this little video series is we're gonna cover a few. We've got a whiteboard too. We didn't mention that at the last meeting. Not only got a TV, couches, and cherry coke, we've also got a whiteboard.
We do.
We've written up a few players that we want to have a bit of a chat about. This could be a good video, I reckon, because a lot of players lost their dual position eligibility in the back line. So we now have to pick from a rather motley looking crew there, Gracie, of guys that they might only average 90 or 95 for the season, but as long as they play 22 games, are going to be slotted firmly in your back line. So with a bit of luck, we'll also have some graphics to show the names of the players and their prices, depending on how we go, and their averages.
So, but
exactly right.
The topics we've got, Fitzy, we've got the top 10 who we think for this year. We've got the 5 Jareds, so they're the roughies that you, that you could put in amongst those sort of top 10 group. And then we've got the 6+ Carlton middies, plus we picked a Traveller, Fitzy. So I hope you like the Carlton middies, because we've got 7 of them. So.
And that actually means mid prices. We thought Carlton middies. And then we've also got a Traveller, because we couldn't agree on 6 for a 6-pack. We've got a 7th player as a Traveller. So,
and who doesn't want a Traveller in the car, even though it's illegal, but we do not condone that at all.
Snapchat us a picture of you and your Traveller. Yes. Or your missus.
Yeah. Hashtag Traveller.
Traveller. So we're going to kick things off with the back line. Top 10 who at the moment are currently sitting as the top 10 priced options. A few we've taken out of there just because no one's going to pick them. But we're going to kick it off with Nick Malcheski, Gracie. He's sitting at $566,000. He's the most expensive defender and the only one who's averaged over 100 in 2014. Your thoughts?
My thoughts is what's going to happen, because they got Kolodjasnic that plays sort of a similar role off the half back line. Can you have both him and Malcheski to keep his scoring as high as it was last year? It was a lot easier with Sydney because obviously they were such a dominant team until the grand final. But look, I'd still pick him. He's your top defender. You got to. It's like with Ablett. You got to pick Ablett. So.
I'm thinking I might pick Malcheski. I think what might happen, which was almost what they tried to do in GW at the GWS with Heath Shaw, is have an older guy down there who can sort of anchor the back line. Malcheski's going to take all the kick-ins, and he's going to kick it to himself half the time. I'm half thinking that he's worth that risk. I mean, he might not start as well, or he might not average as much, but he's only 50k more than the next defender, and he averaged 10 points more than them. So I think he's worth the punt if you ask me at that price. So I'll probably lock him in.
So I think we've both given him the big tick,
giving him the
on
thumbs
that one.
up. So the next one in line, there's a little bit of a drop off here, like I just mentioned in terms of average, is Cade Simpson. He's 512k with an average of 95 from last year. But he did play the 22 games, threw in a couple of shockers. But
top 4 guys actually played.
Top 4 guys all played 22 games. Which is one thing you should really keep in mind, is that even if they only average 93, 94, if they play every game of the year, they're worth their weight in gold because injuries and everything pops up. So Simpson's one guy I locked in last year, and a few games where he got no more than 20 or 30 points, but for the rest of the year he was pretty good, and I think I'll probably go with him again. He was pretty good last year, so no reason not to pick him.
I've been burnt by Carlton defenders before. I picked Walker up after he had that blinder patch. Was it 2 years ago now?
2 years ago, yeah.
And I got him after that, and he just did nothing. So I'm going to be on the question mark on Cade Simpson. Just because a few other guys we're about to mention shortly that I might go just to save maybe a few extra thousand here and there, and use that in other positions.
Like I said, if you can save yourself 50 grand by picking someone cheaper than Simpson, even if they only average 2 or 3 less points, that's not going to be a big difference in the back line this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if none of these guys averaged over 100. Just saying, I could see that happening. So the next one on the list is Sean Burgoyne, who's one of, I think, only 2 guys on this list that have got the back mid dual position. So a lot of people traded him in last year when Sam Mitchell went down. But for me, another year older, he's over 500k. He played 22 games last year, which was good, but I think there's more value around that mark, if you ask me. I'm a bit unsure.
Yeah, well, obviously the next guy we're going to talk about is Brodie Smith. He's got a lot more upside than Burgoyne, a lot younger. He's going to have a lot more run. Especially, obviously, question marks over Burgoyne with Frawley coming into that back line. There's a lot of talent in that back line, and it's just going to be interesting to see how they go together, but I would say no. It's a cross for me for Sean Burgoyne.
Probably say the same. I mean, then you've got guys like Durea and these guys coming through that are going to have that rebounding role. Mitchell's going to be back, I'm assuming, fully fit, but at 506k, I probably would pass, I reckon. And like you said, that's going to lead us into our next player, which is Brodie Smith, who's a tickle under Sean Burgoyne's price at 502k with an average of 93. And as you're saying, I could probably see a lot more upside with him compared to Burgoyne. Age is factoring in. Adelaide's a team, we figure that we'll be on the rise this year. And Smith, now an All-Australian, will only grow into his role. So I'd say he would be a good pick for mine. Should be top 5.
I think I'd be close, probably starting him and Malcheski would be my top 2. At the moment, you can see they're not, but that will change.
What the team this is the early access 2014 teams up on the page there, and looking a bit rough, but that's only a bit of a start.
Spots, but it'll get there.
You got Dick on the bench, Gracie. Just where you like
Don't know how.
Down back, bit of Dick down back.
We've got to try and keep this PG.
All right, so Brodie Smith for mine again. 22 games last year. He did get a bit of attention from Tag, as that's the only thing that would turn me off him this year. But at that price, I think he's almost a lock for mine. And a guy who's not far behind again on price is Heath Shaw, and he's at under 500k this year, 497,000 and an average of 92 last year, which did include a game where he had a meeting with Kurt Tippett's knee. So if you take out that game, I reckon there might have been one or two other games he got subbed out or was injured, or I think one game he actually had to play full back on Jack Rewalt. I do remember that. His average would look a lot better if you take a couple of those games out.
I think if you took out the one he got knocked out, and there was a couple of others where he got injured, in the second quarter, I think was another game. His average is nearly close to 100, so he's always going to be reliable. It's going to be those games where he gets, a 140, a 150, but he's going to be between that 80 to 110, 100 mark. So if you want a consistent scorer week in, week out, as long as he doesn't get injured, he's probably the one to go, and he's going to be the same. He'll be doing most of the kick outs.
Exactly.
Kicking it to himself, having those long kicks. He did a lot more intercept marking as well last year, because he was obviously that senior guy in the team. So, but I'd keep an eye out. Like if he dropped 40k down to 450, I'd definitely snap him up again.
I'd say that right. For mine, I reckon I'll be picking 3 of Malcheski, Simpson, Smith, Shaw, and maybe Hibbert, who we'll talk about shortly. But for mine, I think Shaw had a bit of an up and down year last year, but getting used to a new system. I mean, the only downside with him is he's only going to play that 18 to 20 games per year. Like we see last year, he only played 18. So that's one thing to factor in. But I think just his influence in that back line, a bit like Malcheski, the senior guy there, as you said, that he's definitely worth a look, especially at, 70k less than Malcheski. A guy possibly could average the same, but who knows. So the next guy we'll talk about is the old statesman, Luke Hodge himself.
You missed Josh Gibson.
Yeah, we didn't want to talk about Gibson.
Oh, sorry.
Because we don't like
Gibson. It's okay.
You can delete me on Snapchat.
He used to play for North Melbourne.
He did, yeah. So we've taken him out just because he might be a bit overpriced, and I don't think
for 14 games he's overpriced.
He's a bit overpriced. So we're going to talk about his Hawthorn mate, Luke Hodge, at 492k with an average of 91 last year, Gracie. Now, I punched a few numbers on Hodge when I first started playing around with the preseason team, and if you look at his numbers last year, he actually was relatively consistent. Not a lot of big games like we used to see in the past, but not a lot of bad games either. But the problem with him is the body, number one, whether he's going to miss games from that pesky knee he's had forever. And the other thing that Hawthorn tend to do is give him a red vest when the game's done and dusted. So for me, probably a no. Unless he comes out and has the best season of his career, I think the days when you lock him in are long gone now, I'd say.
Definitely.
So probably a no from me, I'd say.
I would be the same, unless he dropped in price but was still averaging, your 90. Because he's going to have to average pretty high to keep that. that sort of price tag. So
that's right.
I'd probably say no.
No, so I'm definitely in agreement. And the next guy that's similarly priced is Hibbert, who we mentioned just briefly before, at 491k with an average of 91 last year. So last year wasn't as good as his 2013 year, but it's safe to say he's the main man coming out of that Bombers backline. Whether a guy like James Gwilt comes in to play more defensive role and Hibbert can push up the ground, perhaps. I've never been a big fan of him. I think about 91 is probably about his maximum average personally. There's a lot of games where he'll have to play a bit deeper. As for a lot of these guys, they'll have to push deeper and play lockdown role. I probably won't start with him, but I think he's going to be a good upgrade option, I reckon.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't get injured.
Or twang the hammy, the old...
which happened twice last year.
That's right. So
I had him and got rid of him, and then I got him back and he went twang again. So.
I have a personal vendetta against Michael Hibbert from a few years ago when he did that. I brought him in as a bit of a smoke and he did his hammy twice within a couple of weeks. So anyway, he's a good option for mine. I think he'll finish easily top 10, possibly top 5, but an upgrade option for mine.
Yeah.
The next guy was a bloke I had last year that was quite a handy addition.
I think a lot of people actually got on him.
A lot of people got on him was Matty Yench, and he's now 481k with an average of 89 from last year. So I actually crunched the numbers with him again, and there was one game he got subbed off against Melbourne, injured in the first quarter on about 20, and another game where he got knocked out against Freo. And if you take those two scores out, his average bumps up to 94. So he's priced about 4 or 5 points below what he should be. He's always going to be inconsistent is the one thing to keep in mind. He likes the short kicks and the racking up the possessions, but at a guy who's 30 or 40k less than a few other options, he's probably not a bad little smoky. Probably as a D3, I wouldn't have him any higher than that, but a maybe for me. Probably not to start with though.
Yeah, no. I've actually heard some interesting news out of Adelaide this year. I know someone that is friends with Cole Cheney's old man. Hometown. Well, he's not from Horsham. He's
down the road.
But apparently Adelaide is training very hard.
Okay.
And a lot of players are feeling it, so they're getting quite worn out, and a lot of them are spewing their guts up after training. So apparently they're getting pushed quite hard, and New coach, but they one of the comments from one of the players was that they may not even have a team to start in 2015 with. Obviously, we saw Sauce Jacobs have an injury sort of scare.
Faked an injury. Stop training.
Yep. So, but it'd be interesting with some of these Adelaide guys whether this training, like with Smith and Yench, whether that's going to affect them all that much. But Adelaide has always been a pretty fit side.
Very,
But we'll just wait.
We'll just have to wait and see. I see, Yench or Smith ending up in my final team regardless. So
Smith definitely for me. Yench is. I don't know if I'll start with Yench just yet.
I wouldn't. Probably not. Like I said before, maybe as a D3, but no higher than that. But I mean, this year with so many uncertainties, if he averaged 90 and played 22 games again, I would take that as sort of like a second last defender. So, and the other thing is we've got one guy to talk about later on coming back into the mix that might affect that as well. And so the last two guys I've got on the list here, we'll do them combined, Grease, because they're both very similarly priced. Corey Enright and Grant Birchall. Enright at 478k and Birchall at 477. Both averaged around 89 last year. So these are two guys, Enright probably more so that you might look at skipping this year. I've never really been a big fan of Birchall. He's sort of not as consistent as he used to be, I don't reckon. So
he used to have those big... Well, he started off the year a couple of years ago really big. Yeah. And everyone sort of jumped on, and then he hurt his knee and was out for
his knee. He was out for a while. Yes, everyone paid top dollar for him, and then he just sort of got injured. Yeah. So I just think with the Hawthorn team the way it is, Suckling's going to take points off him. Like Durea's going to take points. Hodge, Burgoyne, they're all going to share it around a lot. So I'd be cautious about starting any of the Hawthorn guys. I reckon at least so you can see how they're structuring the team. Yeah. And I'd say probably Enright and James Kelly's in that list as well. They're probably a little bit past it, you would say now. And of course, Geelong rests players every year. So in terms of... I honestly think Enright will only play 16 games this year, 16 to 17 games. So because they're still pushing for a finals spot this year. So but you'll find that they'll start like Jed Buse and those sort of guys will start Glad the guys, Billy Smets probably will fit in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that pretty much does us for a bit of a rundown of the top 10 price-wise, other than Josh Gibson, who we thought we'd skip there. But we'll move on to our 5 Jareds, Gracie, or the roughheads, the roughies that are sort of almost in that bracket. They're just a bit below the 500k mark, but we think they could push top 10 and maybe even higher. So the first one we'll kick it off with is Andrew Walker, who you mentioned earlier. Had a good season in 2013. Last year, had a few injuries, and his role was sort of a bit up in the air. But you reckon he might be able to bounce back this year?
It's possible, yeah. I think, obviously, the Carlton team hasn't changed all that much. They got a couple of the Brisbane guys, and I think they got a couple of, is it GWS guys?
Yep, yeah, Jacks and some Wiley, but he's not a defender, is he? No.
But Jacks be the only one that may affect Walker, because he'll probably play down back and on a wing again. But I don't think I'd go with him, just because I've been burnt from him before. Yep. So I'd probably say no for me.
Possibly, if he was, even if he was at 450k, I reckon you'd probably lock him in at just have a gamble.
But 472 is probably that little when you've got, Matty Yench who's 481, an extra 9,000.
Yeah, more upside with the guy around that mark. Even Hibbert, or even, I'd probably even go Hodge over him, to be perfectly honest. I think the thing with Walker is he's been in the league for 10 years. He's had one good season playing that specific role. I wouldn't count on Mick throwing him in there every week, so maybe pass on him for now, unless his NAB Cup form shows otherwise, of course. The next guy I've put down on the list is Scotty Thompson, who went from a 98 average in 2013 to about a 75 average last year, Gracie. So the years before that, he was averaging sort of high 80s, so it wasn't a surprising drop-off, but I think last year he took a lot more of a defensive role, especially with injuries to Lockie Hansen, and Grimer was a bit hit and miss, and Tippett got injured, so he sort of had to play deep a lot more. And wasn't able to free himself up and get a lot of intercept marks and a lot of kicks and handballs. So at 422k though, I'm very tempted at that price to. I mean, like we were saying earlier, if he averages 90 and he'll put in that odd game of 150 or more, taking a lot of intercept marks, I actually really like him at 422.
Yep.
Don't mind him.
In my side at the moment, so. I think he should be well and truly considered. He's at 24k cheaper than Harry Taylor, who plays a very similar role. They're sort of that intercept marking, sort of cover defender. So I'd be picking him over Harry Taylor. Obviously North's got a bit more probably upside at the moment, like this coming year, than probably Geelong does. They got probably that next step ahead.
The next group coming through. Those
young guys have sort of developed a bit, so if Tippett and those guys stay fit, I think you'll find Scotty Thompson will get back to that 90 average.
I can see that happening as well. And the next guy I do have on the list there, Grace, is Harry Taylor at 446k. Possibly his role, it's another one that his role could be anything, depending on up, forward, down, back. Maybe an upgrade target. I mean, you think he starts at 446k, and last year's average would have been in the 80s, I'm assuming. Put it this way, if he averages 95 for the first 5 rounds, he's only going to go up another 50k, so you might as well fork out a bit more once you know these guys' roles are going to be Supercoach friendly. So he was the next guy on the list. I'd probably pass on him to start with, but not a bad option. The second last guy I've got in that list is Shannon Hearn, who is 467k, and I really like almost the most out of all these guys. He's the West Coast Eagles captain. Hopefully his pre-season's been really, really good. But he's one guy I think will definitely push top 10, and if not top 5 for mine.
Definitely. I think you could have him in there. He's got those long kicks, and he's the leader now of his team. So can't see why he can't get close to a 90 to 100 average this year.
That big booming kick of his, a few goals. And
if Bo Waters is back fully fit, that only helps him out even more.
Exactly, who we'll talk about in a minute. But those West Coast backline guys could really feed off each other, I reckon. It's almost like one needs the other one to get a few extra kicks in there. And the last guy in the list of Jared's, Gracie, is Jack Nunes, who has been getting a lot of hype at this stage of the pre-season. A lot of talk about him playing an inside midfielder role. He's put on a bit of weight over the pre-season to get him ready for playing midfield. I don't mind him. I mean, you could draw some comparisons to David Swallow last year. I don't expect him to average 105 or anything, but as a guy that could make you sort of 50, 60, 70, 80k and then end up being your last defender, it could be worth rolling the dice. But
could be. He's going to be one of those ones that you risk him over a bit cheaper, like a Walker or a Hearn or a Taylor.
Yep.
He could be just that one that you might just get like Jensch last year.
Correct.
He could be the Jensch of this year. But I don't know. I think just maybe give him another year to develop.
See how he goes.
And see how he goes. If he was 400,000, I'd definitely consider him.
Yeah.
But 436, just that little bit too much, especially when you got Scott Thompson who's 422.
Yeah, he's less.
Less for a guy that that's gonna do well most weeks.
Yeah.
So.
I personally do like him quite a bit. I think it depends how St Kilda's season's going to go, because they're going to blood a lot of young guys, and I can't really see too many of their midfielders having a big season. So even if he does play mid 100% of the time, I still don't know if there's a lot of points going around that midfield for him to be a keeper. But I reckon any of those 5 guys on that list, Grace, you should be slotted in as your D4. I reckon you can pick any of those off that list. Pick your premiums, chuck one of them in. One guy we're going to recommend for D5 is Beau Waters. We'll talk about him in a sec. But with the lack of backline rookie options at this stage, we might need to look at going sort of 3 premiums. One of these mid-price guys, chuck a Jared in at D4. And for mine, Nunes or Hearn could be the pick of those guys. But one of them might be worth rolling the dice on. And
definitely.
The last category we're going to talk about is some lower price mid options, or the Carlton middies as we've called them. We've got the 6-pack, and we've got a traveller with us as well, because we came up with 7 names. And the first one of which we've been hinting at for a bit is Beau Waters, who
if he's not the first pick player in your team, you should not be doing Supercoach. No. He's back. He's fit from what we've heard and read and all that. So it's just a matter of him playing some NAB Cup. If he plays two NAB Cup games, he should be in.
Yep.
Because they won't play him in every game. They'll give him a couple of hit outs, and obviously they'll play some inter-club games. But definitely 267 for a guy that could average 100,
which he did a few years ago.
Yeah, even if he gets you up to 450 with an average of 85, and you upgrade him to a Walker who might be averaging 100, or a Simpson who might be up there averaging 100. So definitely, I'd definitely lock Beau Waters in. So
take him.
Definitely.
Not much more to say. Lock him in. If he lines up round 1, lock him in.
Definitely.
No doubt about that one. So. The second guy I've got on the list here, Gracie, is an interesting choice. Is Jack Grimes, who
you actually mentioned.
I mentioned him because a lot of people, he comes around every year. It's like, he was injured last year. Surely this is his year. He's only 398k to start 2015. I think he's not the captain anymore, is he? So he's sort of pushed that duty away. He's shown a lot of flashes in the past. At that price, he might be worth a flutter. Especially because there's a lot of guys that are cheaper than him that you could downgrade him to if need be. But as an option, I don't know when his buy is, but that might fit in as a bit of a risk if you wanted to go a point of difference. But the body's always going to be the problem.
Yeah, I still think he's going to be perfect for a draft league. Probably not for a D4, D5, 6 sort of player. So probably just a little bit expensive. If he was 350 or 360, geez, you'd lock him in.
Take the risk.
He could average 80 to a 90, or he could just average 60, 70.
That's right. There's too much of a mixed bag to go with it.
Yeah, so
and it's almost like, because a lot of people said, he played midfield last year and, he wasn't scoring well. But I just think that he had a bad year, to be honest. I just don't think he could really get into any games. But the next guy on our list, Grace, he's changed clubs. He hasn't really got a lot of people talking. It's James Frawley.
He was probably the most talked about player last year in terms of where he was going to end up, whether it was Hawthorn or Geelong. Hawthorn got him. To be honest, 418. Look, he's a bit up there in price, especially when Scotty Thompson's 422. With Frawley, he's got Lake, he's got Birchall, Gibson. Who else is up there? Sean Makers is up there. Whitecross is coming back as well. So, how do they fit all these guys in, and
depending on where they play?
Where do they play best? Does Frawley go forward and help out Roughhead and Gunston and Bruce? So
that's it.
Look, it's one I would wait the first couple of rounds and see how he went, and see how his NAB Cup games
possibly
were,
so. You might even take a risk on Scott Thompson, and Frawley's been playing better in round 2, make that switch just to fix up use a burner trade to fix up a bad mistake. But Probably, yeah. I wouldn't mind keeping an eye on him because when he's played forward, he has kicked bags of goals, especially when he's got that sort of a midfield feeding him the ball. You saw how well Franklin and Roughhead played together. It's no comparison between Buddy and Frawley, but you never know. He could kick 40 goals for the year and get flung down back up forward and have a good season. So watch this space.
Definitely. Now, the next 4, Fitzy, these are the beers you got to check to make sure they're not already cracked or warm ones, because these are 4 risky players we've put up here, but it's out of the box and guys that could be the ones that go to that next level this year. They could,
Gracie. And I reckon we could probably talk about them at once, and maybe we can get some cool graphics pop up in the corner. We've got Sam Mays at 369k, has picked up the backline dual position. Paul Seedsman, who had a really good 2013, only played 9 games last year. He's 363. Garrick Ibbotson, who's still similar to Seedsman, had a pretty good 2013, did nothing last year at 342. And Ricky Henderson at 319k, who's coming back from injury as the other ones are. So here's a few guys that a couple of them would have popped up in your team a couple of years ago. Last year, obviously, had a down season. Mays is probably the exception there. I got you to write him up on our sexy whiteboard just because of that third-year breakout rule. There's a good chance he might have the year where he pops up with a 90 average, perhaps. Probably not at his price point for mine. He's one to keep an eye on in NAB Cup form, but his problem's going to be the Brisbane's midfield's more stacked than, whatever. So that could be his problem at the end of the day, but worth keeping an eye on.
Definitely. So, out of those 4, Fitzy, if you had to pick 2, who would you pick?
I would probably go Seedsman. I think that he had a really good year a couple of years ago as that rebounding defender. Now, sort of Heath Shaw's out of the way from a couple of years ago when he was sort of sharing that role. I don't think Fasolo is going to continue as a backliner. Langdon's still obviously learning the game, so if Seedsman's fully fit, I could see him playing that half-back role and really doing quite well. And the other ones are quite hard to pick, but I don't mind Ibbotson. I think that year he had a couple of years ago was quite good. He had a lot of big scores.
Very injury
prone is the only thing. And the Ross Lyons system, him and Duffield seem to switch the rebounding defender around. But at his price, again, he's the sort of guy at 342k. If he has a few crap games, just downgrade him to someone else and move on. So that's who I'd look at.
I'm going Seedsman. If he's fully fit, I'm locking in Big Hendo. Ricky Henderson back. Played, I think, 8 or 9 games last year. 319. He could be the guy that makes you 180k.
Could be.
And,
that's it.
Because I think he'll slot straight back in and help Yench and Smith out. Obviously, there's no Rutten's gone now, so he'll slot back in nicely into that back line. So.
So I could see it'd be. You'd imagine it would be Talia, Hardigan, and Henderson, and then Brodie Smith, Yench, and Lukey Brown would be that back 6 I can see at the moment. So Henderson does have the also the ability to go forward and snag a few goals. He's a big unit. So as long as he has a good preseason, 319k, I don't mind him if his role is similar to what he was playing a few years ago when he had a good year. So keep an eye on him as well. So we've wrapped all that up, Fitzy. The next video we're on to is the mids. So we'll try and make that one a bit quicker for you. We did babble on a bit in the back one, but don't forget, tweet, Facebook. I do have Instagram. We have Instagram. And Snapchat.
Yes, we will put our Snapchats up. And everything. Everything will be up there.
And don't forget to buy a pair of big thongs.
Yes, and Cherry Coke.
Yeah,
it's good.
See you next time.
See ya.
Hooroo.